What kind of empire builds castles to last forever, and then lets them collapse almost overnight? This is Kenmure Castle, once a proud seat of aristocratic power. Today, it's nothing but a ruin, and it's not alone. Across Britain, more than 3,000 mansions like this one have vanished, either demolished, abandoned, or simply taken over by moss and rain. So here's the real question: were these houses ever built to last, or were they always built to fail? This is the story of how Britain's big houses rose and fell, funded by booming industries, colonial riches, and sometimes slavery. It's about how fortunes that seemed unshakable collapsed within a single lifetime, and why today Kenmure Castle and hundreds like it stand as monuments not to power, but to failure. Kenmure Castle sits on a mound that's been occupied since the Middle Ages. Kings visited here. Mary Queen of Scots stayed here in 1563, and then in the 1600s, the Gordon family made it their seat. But the building we see today isn't medieval at all. Most of it was modernised in the 19th century, when the Gordon heirs tried to turn their crumbling fortress into a fashionable mansion. But the problem was, the timing was terrible. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, Britain went through a frenzy of mansion building. Industrialists who made fortunes in coal, banking, or weapons wanted estates to show they'd arrived. Plantation owners brought home money made from enslaved labour in the Caribbean. Owning a grand house wasn't just about comfort, it was a symbol. These buildings were designed to scream status. But symbols are fragile. You see, the very success that built these places also planted the seeds of their destruction. They were enormous, drafty, and expensive to run. A single estate might employ dozens of servants, maids, cooks, grooms, gardeners. That was fine when business was booming, when coal was king, when sugar and cotton flowed in from overseas. But once markets dipped, or slavery ended, or war disrupted trade, the money dried up, but the bills didn't. By the early 20th century, the decline was impossible to ignore. Inheritance taxes took huge bites out of aristocratic fortunes. Wars made servants hard to find. Suddenly, these mansions weren't status symbols, they were money pits. In Britain, one country house was being demolished every 5 days by the 1950s. Think about that. Buildings that had stood for centuries, gone in a matter of weeks. Kenmure wasn't demolished, but by the mid-20th century, it was abandoned and left to rot. It wasn't just the houses that disappeared, entire communities revolved around the big house. Servants lived here, local communities depended on the estate for work, education, even hospitals. So when the roof caved in, so did a whole way of life. For some, that meant an escape from feudal hierarchy. For others, it meant unemployment and decay. But here's the truth. Many of these houses were built with money that was never clean to begin with. Slave plantations in the Caribbean, compensation payouts to slave owners when slavery was abolished, fortunes from colonial trade in sugar, tobacco, and cotton. The grandeur of country houses wasn't just about taste and architecture, it was about the profits of empire. And when the empire shrank, so did the wealth that sustained them. Kenmure is a perfect example. Its aristocratic family line faltered. The Viscount who joined the 1715 Jacobite rebellion was executed. The title lapsed, then restored, then lapsed again. By the 1800s, the family tried to restore the castle, but they were fighting centuries of decline. By the 1950s, it was abandoned. There were no heirs with enough money to save it, no state rescue, just wind, rain, and ivy. Kenmure's story is dramatic, but it's not unique. Over 3,000 houses like this have been lost across Britain. Some collapsed into ruins, some were dynamited, some stripped and sold off piece by piece. Each one was meant to project forever, and yet, forever, it turns out, can be surprisingly short. Today, a few great houses survive, thanks to the National Trust, heritage campaigns, or tourism. They've been reframed as museums, wedding venues, even film sets. But ruins like Kenmure force us to ask tougher questions. When we admire country houses, are we seeing just the architecture, or also the systems of exploitation that built them? And as wealth inequality rises again today, it's worth asking, what monuments are we building now that might look like ruins to our grandchildren? Kenmure Castle was built to show power. Now it shows the opposite. Power fades, wealth collapses. No building, no matter how grand, can last forever. But maybe this channel can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.